Hello everyone, I'm Jim Edwards. Welcome to On the Road. Normally you'll see me out in the field somewhere out in the country on the road, and that's one of the stops that we do, but today is a special 1 hour edition of On the Road, and it's because of a certain fella in the area that a lot of people know, a friend of mine and a friend of yours for many, many years. And of course, I'm speaking of none other than the legend in his own mind, in his own time, Johnny Wood. Hey, my friend.
What happened to all that black hair you had?
Well,
at least you still got your hair.
I was going to say, I still got mine, and I noticed.
You didn't wear glasses then either.
I didn't, no.
Neither did I.
Back in the day, yeah, in the good old days.
That was
yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, that's right, exactly. And but it's so good to be able to talk to you. I want to take us back to the good old days, as I refer to them. Of course, everybody has their own good old days whenever, but I remember we both came from radio, and I want you to expound on that in a moment. But I came over from WKIN in Kingsport. I actually started my radio career at WNVA in Norton, and went to WKIN in Kingsport. And actually, how I got into television back in 1968. WCYB TV also on WCYB Radio, which is now WZAP. And I had gone to the offices of WCYB, which was the whole 6th floor of the arcade building, and I'd filled out an application for radio. Well, about 3 days later, I got a call from Walter Crockett, who was the news manager at WCYB News. And Walter asked me if I'd be interested in doing television news. And I said, well, Walter, I've never done it. I'm a radio man. He said, I'll teach you. Well, that's what happened, and that's how I got into television. February, either a day or two before or after Valentine's Day, I ended up in the news department in 1968 at WCYB in the old building. And I'll get to that in a moment. Right. But I want you to pick it up there because I was February '68, and then you came on board shortly after.
I believe it was March.
I think so.
I started at WOPI radio. And Ed Spiegel, remember Ed?
Yes, I remember Ed.
He was manager then at WCYB radio. Boy, there's a lot of alphabets here.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he had called me and wanted to know, he had an opening and wanted to know if I knew of anybody. And I was kind of fed up what was going on where I was working. You've ever had that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, in radio there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what about me? He said, really? Yeah, I said, yeah. Well, come on over and we'll talk to Mr. Smith. So that was the founder of the company. So I went to work at WCYB radio, and I think Jerry Delantonis, somebody like that left.
Jerry was here and left, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And Art Countess called me and says, hey, we need somebody to do sports. You've done a lot of sports in radio. And I said, I don't know anything about TV. Same conversation.
Right.
We'll teach you.
Yes.
So Randy Brown showed me how to shoot film. He probably showed you
Yes.
too.
Oh, yeah.
Put it on. He had to talk a real country voice. I
Yeah.
think he shoot tobacco too. Put it on infinity, F2, and don't change a thing.
Yeah,
I had
that's
to
it.
clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I went out and shot the football jamboree or something that fall.
Right.
And, lo and behold, there we were.
There we were. And in our day, then, we had the old wind-up cameras, remember?
Oh, sure.
And unlike the
16 millimeter film.
right, and we'd have to take the film out of the tin can and sort of feed it through the camera and let it, roll a little bit off, close the door, and then there you go.
I was cleaning out my desk the other day and I found a changing bag.
Oh, really?
You know, where
Yeah.
when you got out in the field with the camera, you didn't want the film to get exposed,
Right.
particularly if it was on a bulk roll.
Right.
You had to put the camera and the film in a dark bag, and put your hands in there and zip it up. And anyway,
Exactly.
nobody in the building knew what that thing was.
Had no idea, you're right. And today's modern television news, of course, we didn't have teleprompters, remember that?
Oh, no.
And
Didn't have a lot of electronic.
we'd have a lot of stuff, right? And then that was back in the day. Remember, that was when color was first coming out. And you remember the big, huge 1,500 candle power bulbs and the 20-inch polished aluminum reflectors.
I got a real good tan during the Telerama.
That's right. Yes, sir. The Telerama was part of it. And of course, when I came on board, Merrill Moore had been doing the mornings, and they switched Merrill to evenings, to 6 and 11. So I started doing mornings, and I would do the breaks in the Today Show.
Yep.
And after a 5-minute newscast in those shows with all of those lights and the reflectors, you'd be sweating like you're out on the beach somewhere.
And I know you had a lot of eye problems.
Yes, I did.
The lights really bothered
Right,
you.
the lights bothered me. I ended up having to leave because I went through all the tests that were available, and finally a specialist said, well, your eyes are just extra sensitive to light, so you'll just have to wear these dark glasses. Well, back then, we also didn't have a cameraman to cue us, or I did. And
we didn't later in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in the mornings, I had, I think it was like a 19-inch monitor and a big clock to time myself out. And so I could see myself in those glasses, and it was very, uncomfortable. And I found out later that Bob Smith was going to ask him to take me off the air because of it, which I understood. And but the thing about what we did, you remember the old building that we were in was it had the former Nash Rambler car dealership.
Yes.
The news department was in that side where we were, and the old clunker AP machines.
Yeah. The old States Motor Company.
Yeah,
that's
right.
what it was. And
Exactly.
they sold Nashes, not
Right.
Ramblers.
Well, Nash.
That's Nash.
That's
No,
right.
That's
Nash.
how old it was.
That's right. And in the middle was Dan Drinkard's Peter Pan Pastry Shop, which I think I'm still carrying some of the big fat
and the pool hall was up the road.
That's right, the pool hall, and then they had a bus station and bowling alley on the other end. And of course, those were the good old days. We worked with, like I said, Walter Crockett, Mira Moore, Art Countess, Evelyn Boer.
That was on the air, right?
Yeah. And you remember the little booth over in the corner where we had to do the radio news? If you worked in the news department, you were required in the mornings anyway to do news for radio. And I remember
we did in the afternoon as well.
Yeah, and Eddie Cowell was on the air, and he would, push the
You
buttons.
mentioned that name, Eddie Cowell.
Yeah.
That's one of the real pleasures I've had in this business. I used to listen to Eddie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Just idolized him,
Yeah.
And I got a chance to work with him on air.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
that was something.
He was a true gentleman in every respect. And I remember that back in the day, like it was in radio, of course, a lot of times you wore several hats. And at WCYB then, I was in the news department. I'd do the breaks in the Today Show, and then I'd be scheduled to go out as a field reporter later. And Ed Spiegel was doing Looney Tunes Club in the afternoons, and then he also hosted, they had 3 shows, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. Art Countess hosted, I think it was called Classroom Quiz, which was the high school students. Then Ed had Kitty College, and Eddie Cowell had Club Quiz.
Civic clubs.
Right. And so Ed Spiegel left, went back to Chicago, and so Charlie Linebarger was program director at that time, and he asked me if I would fill in until they could find somebody to do Kitty College, which was great. I loved it. Well, then Eddie Cowell later had a heart attack, and so he asked me to fill in on Club Quiz. So there I was enjoying the elementary kids on Kitty College, the seniors on Club Quiz, just having a great time. And then, of course, like I said, the thing with the eyes caused me to leave in the summer of '70.
I did all those shows
And
too.
then you came on afterwards to keep them going, and I watched a great job. And
I got to do Looney Tunes.
after
Don Sluter had it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got a card from Don Sluter.
Really?
a week or two
Where's
ago.
he in now?
I guess still in Johnson
Still in
City.
Johnson City?
It's hard to tell from the mail because it's all sorted
It's
in
all,
boxes.
it's all, yeah.
Or run over. or
Wherever,
done
yeah.
it. But anyhow, I did get a card, a congratulatory card from him
Yeah.
on my retirement. But yeah, I worked with Don too.
Oh, yeah.
The guy was the most creative person in radio I've ever worked with.
Right.
He did all of our production and write. He wrote commercials. He
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
tremendous talent.
Yeah, he did it all. Yeah, yes, sir. And of course, I have to come back to WCYB in our day with the clowns that we had. Well, characters would be better.
You said it.
If I mention the name Dave Cooper, Don
man.
Seaver, yeah.
Don's passed on.
The late Don Seaver, I hate, yeah.
What-
But Dave Cooper, and like I said, we didn't have a cameraman. And the lenses on the cameras were, you could get this close without being seen. And Dave loved to catch me on the air in the mornings, and he always tried to break me up on the air by doing something right beside the camera, and he always waited until I was doing a political story. He would get beside the camera and go through the motion of a shovel and giving it this right by the camera, and I'm trying to be serious doing the news. Fortunately, I was able to get through them.
The late Jack Mallett.
Yes, I remember Jack.
Was the most professional guy I was ever around.
Right.
He would come in and read the news on the night side
Yeah.
on weekends.
Right.
And I would prepare it, And we didn't rip and read, but we we had read a lot of AP copy.
Yeah.
And Russ Robinson, our engineer, was monkeying around with the AP machines and had managed to get them to print Spanish.
Uh-oh.
So, Wallace Coffee, you remember
Yeah,
Wallace?
remember
He was
Wallace,
directing.
yeah.
So we cut this copy and then inserted it in the middle, about 3 or 4 pages of Spanish copy into a 15-minute newscast, which he just had to read cold on the air. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Exactly.
there was no
You
commercial or
look,
anything. You had to go through the
and
whole
that's
thing.
right. Yes, sir.
Well, Jack prided himself on being able to read anything cold. That is, he didn't look it over.
Yeah, right.
Look over. Well, everybody in the building knew where that Spanish copy was. It was after some story about whatever.
Yeah.
So we were all, you know. And so Jack there, he's reading. And in other news, Espanol, he read 3 pages of that stuff. I don't think very many people understand Spanish. In other news today, and
Right on. I'm just glad he knew Spanish.
he
Yeah.
never
never
blinked.
Yeah.
I mean,
Never missed a beat.
no.
Yeah.
And we were all going, ah.
You spoiled that trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
There's
goodness.
a fellow named George Sells did the same thing, come in and would read the news.
Yeah.
And he had he'd come in Bermuda shorts, you know. Nobody knows what you're wearing below the
Right.
waist. We're actually naked up here.
Yeah, that's right.
We're weird. No, but I mean, you know, you could wear about anything. He wore Bermuda shorts and a T-shirt, and he had this dickie, you know, which is just a neck, a collar and a tie,
looked like a coat,
and a blazer.
Yeah.
So he'd wear that. And after Walter passed away, we were still doing editorials, and Charlie Lineberger would come in and read the editorials, and Charlie never, ever wore a tie. So he had a blue blazer and a tie that he would wear if he had to go take somebody out to lunch. He was program manager, so he'd put that on. Well, some fellows up in Mountain City wrote us a letter asking us if Charlie had anything else to wear. If not, they would be glad to take up a collection.
Same shirt, same dirty neck collar.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah.
As he mentioned, there were a lot of people in this business, characters.
Oh yes, characters.
Not that there aren't now.
Oh yeah, right. And
anymore.
I remember when I first started in the news, I didn't know what to do to get out of it. And so somebody said, well, when you finish the news, just look at the camera and smile. Well, you can imagine you're reading a newscast, and then you just look at the camera, and all of a sudden you just do this big smile, you know, for like, I don't know how long. I had to get used to timing myself out at, you know, at 29:50. And so I kept doing that. But one day.
That's 29 minutes and 50 seconds past the hour.
Right, exactly.
10-second break and you go to network.
For the break, exactly. There you
Just
go.
explain, I've done this too.
Right.
It's not
And,
my first rodeo either.
That's right, yeah. And Tony Venable's dad, Howard, worked with us. Remember
Yes.
Howard?
Yep.
And Howard was in, well, he worked in the arcade building. The whole 7th floor was CYB offices and headquarters, and 6th floor was radio. I think Howard worked in production or something.
Well, he was actually, was he the production manager? No, Jim Evans was that.
Yeah, he was.
Anyway.
But anyway, Howard came over.
Traffic. He was traffic manager.
Right. And he came
That's
over.
the people that schedule all the commercials and time everything.
Yeah, put the log together for, well, at least get it sent to be done. Yeah. And Howard came in after, I think it was, it would have been the 8:25 break, because he came in at 8:39 or something. And he said, Jim, he said, I want to give you some advice. And he said, I hope I don't hurt your feelings or make you mad. But he said, I don't care if I do. He said, when you're closing the news, he said, stop looking like a dork and sitting there and look at the camera and smile for 30 seconds. He said, just get out of it at 29:50. And I said, okay. Later on, I appreciated it, and I kept working. How do I do this? So finally, I just said, read your last story, the weather, or whatever briefly, and the temperature is. I'm Jim Edwards, WCYB News. And it went that way.
I did. I would look down at my clock. You know, I didn't sit there and stare at it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's some director that's going to keep you on the air.
Yeah.
To see who blinks first.
Who blinks first, yeah. But, the good old days. And
Yeah.
now, let's bring us to you. And my goodness, if I hadn't had the problems with my eyes and had to leave, it was summer of '70, I probably would have still been here and maybe either retired before, at the same time, or after you. But my goodness, 68 to 2012 is what, over 40
44
years.
years.
44 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you survived. I mean, you got a great following, people, a household word, like everybody was saying. at the Paramount. Of course, by the way, I had a chance to catch Johnny Now. I hope a lot of you folks saw WCYB's presentation of Johnny Farewell to Johnny at the Paramount Center for the Arts, and it was a great show. I was there and enjoyed it very much. You had some folks come in and see you, Mara Moore and Dr. Teresa Keller.
Well, that's hard to say.
Yeah, yes, it is. And I enjoyed the stories of the bloopers. You and Teresa with the bloopers who went to Dick Clark, and you with the great smoke out day and all
Well,
that.
we all smoked and drank coffee and everything back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
And